Okay, so I'm Fuqiao Xue. I'm the new lead of the internationalization activity at the W3C. So today I'm going to talk about what the W3C internationalization activity do and how is the activity organized and our future work. So access to a web for all has been a fundamental concern and goal of the W3C since the beginning, and is a natural requirement for web applications given that they can be accessed by people around the world. However, it is easy to overlook the needs of people from cultures different to our own or who use different languages or writing systems. As of 2024, English is still the most popular language used for websites, with about 52% of web content. And Spanish ranked second with about 5.5% of websites. However, in regions, there are regions like Southern Asia or Africa, which still has a relatively low internet penetration rate. And more than half of the global internet users are in Asia, which is about 2.9 billion users. So that's why we need internationalization. Our work covers three main areas. Language enablement is to understand where the gaps are for the global users of the global web. And developer support is to build standards and applications that support the global web. And education and outreach is to help people create content in their own language or create content that will be localized. So here are some examples of the work we do. We have a language matrix, which is a heat map for people to see where the problems are for some users in a specific language. And you can click on any cell to see the detailed gap analysis for that language and that particular feature. We have layout requirements, which is to document the requirements for a specific language and give input to the related working groups or sometimes some external groups. We have a gap analysis framework, which contains a summary for the gaps and links to the specifications, the priority, links to test suites, to browser bug reports about a specific language, about the gaps between the requirements and the actual implementations for a language. We have a more generic language enablement index, which contains links to the requirements, the GitHub discussions, the tests, the gap analysis, and links to other useful documents as for all the languages, which is an index, unlike the gap analysis I mentioned, which is one document for one specific language. So next is developer support. One of the missions of the W3C internationalization activity is to support developers. So the developers in question here mostly includes spec writers and browser implementers. So all W3C recommendations, registries, and statements are reviewed by the horizontal groups, including the internationalization working group. Here's an example of issues we raised to the CSS text specification. We have a document called Internationalization Best Practices for Spec Developers, which is provides a checklist for ITN best practices for spec developers with some links to other useful documents. And we have a special project called Stream Meta, which describes the best practices related to language and direction metadata for strings on the web. Next, we have education and outreach. We have a set of articles, many with translations for content authors, like about characters, about language, about markup, text direction, styling, navigation, and so on and so forth. And if you're interested in translating any of these articles into your own language, feel free to contact me. We also have a task-oriented advice for content authors called the Internationalization Techniques Index. So the Internationalization Working Group is led by Addison Phillips. The group gathers and makes available requirements for writing systems and languages. We also provide internationalization advice to other groups, including all other W3C groups and some external groups like Unicode and the IETF. And as I just mentioned, we also develop education and outreach materials. We also have an interest group led by Martin Durst. The interest group shares advice and information across a large group of language experts and maintains a number of task forces like the Japanese task force, the Arabic, Hebrew, Chinese, Korean, Mongolian, Tibetan languages of the Americas, of the European languages, of the Southeast Asian languages, of Indic scripts. We have all these task forces, and we will document the requirements and give input to the working group to develop its deliverables. So the future. In the future, we will research more typographic conventions and work with the spec and browser developers to fix the gaps, and especially for those languages that need more help, like the endangered scripts and languages. We will also renovate the Internationalization Technique Index. Why do we need to support endangered scripts and languages? So endangered scripts and languages are a unique repository of linguistic and cultural knowledge. And each script and language represents a distinct way of understanding the world and expressing ideas. Language and our language enablement work helps those communities maintain their sense of identity and pride. We'll work with relevant experts to explain the requirements and document the gaps between what is needed and what is currently supported in the browsers and other user agents like ebook readers. And technology, especially web technology, plays a significant role in language preservation. We'll work with the relevant stakeholders to facilitate our language enablement efforts. Last but not least, an important message: to produce change, we need you to provide guidance and work through issues. Get involved and help us ensure that the web meets local needs around the world. Thank you.